In this next chapter, we'll give the user feedback based on whether they're looking at or away from a hologram. First, we'll modify the cursor, and we'll change its appearance based on what you're looking at. Then, we'll change our holograms based on whether you're looking at them or away from them. The first thing we'll do is add a gaze manager. What the gaze manager does is perform a raycast in the direction of the user's gaze. It will then store the position and normal of where that raycast hit. So back in Unity, in the Hierarchy panel, select the Create button and select Create Empty. Right-click the new game object and select Rename. Name this object Manager. In the Scripts folder, find Gaze Manager. With Managers selected, drag and drop the Gaze Manager from the Project panel into the inspector. Find the Raycast Layer Mask parameter and unselect Transparent FX. Now let's add a Cursor Manager. What the Cursor Manager does is it decides which cursor should be active. So when we're looking at a hologram, we want one cursor to be visible, and when we're looking away from that hologram, we want a different cursor to be visible. And last, we'll position the cursor where the user is gazing. So back in the Project panel, select the Holograms folder, and you'll find a cursor asset. Drag and drop that cursor into the Hierarchy panel. In the Scripts folder, find Cursor Manager. With the cursor selected in the hierarchy, drag and drop the Cursor Manager from the Project panel into the Inspector panel. Go back to the hierarchy, and using the arrow on the left, expand the cursor. Drag and drop the Cursor on Holograms object from the hierarchy onto the Cursor on Holograms parameter in the Inspector panel. Go back to the hierarchy and do the same thing with Cursor off Holograms. Drag and drop Cursor off Holograms from the hierarchy over to the Inspector panel and onto the Cursor off Holograms parameter. Now we have a coding exercise for you. You can open up Gaze Manager and Cursor Manager and follow coding exercises 2A and 2B. Otherwise, you can use the completed solution in the documentation. Now we're going to add an Interactable Manager. What the Interactable Manager does is it detects if we're gazing at a hologram, and if we are, we send that hologram a Gaze Entered message. If we're no longer gazing at that hologram, we'll send that hologram a Gaze Exited message. The hologram can then decide, based on these two messages, what actions it wants to perform. Select the Scripts folder. Select the Managers object in the hierarchy and drag and drop the Interactable Manager into the Inspector panel. Double-click the Interactable Manager script to open it in Visual Studio. Here's our complete Interactable Manager. If you look in the Update function, the first thing we do is save a reference to the currently focused game object. That's the object that the user is looking at. Next, we'll look at the Gaze Manager, and if it detected that the user is looking at a hologram, it'll grab the hit info from that Gaze Manager, and that's some more information about what the user was looking at. Using the hit info variable, we'll select its collider and then the game object on that collider, and that's the game object that the user is currently looking at. If the object the user is looking at is different than what they were previously looking at, then we'll reset the focused interactable. And we'll send a Gaze Entered message to the new game object being looked at. In the Reset Focused Interactable function, we'll send a gaze exited message to the old game object that was being looked at. In the next chapter, we'll explore the directional indicator, which helps users find holograms in their world.